Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now. On today's episode of the One Gang Worldwide podcast, we're riding alongside a legend in the world of custom motorcycles, Paul Yaffe. Paul's designs aren't just bikes, they're rolling masterpieces celebrated for their aesthetic allure and groundbreaking functionality. Paul will take us through his journey from motorcycle enthusiast to iconic builder, share his philosophy on design, and discuss what it takes to create motorcycles that stand out in every crowd. So let's throttle up and dive into the world of custom bike building with Paul Yaffe, right here on the One Gang podcast.
Well, so there was one guy who was a parts runner.
Right.
There was one guy who did accounting and payroll and stuff. There was one guy who did all the customer relations. There was a mechanic and a fabricator, and they were all me.
There is one employee. It's so funny.
Hey, One Gang, if you enjoy the podcast, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can turn notifications on to hear when new episodes are dropped too. Any of your engagement supports the show and helps us book great guests and keeps us going. If you or a friend would make a great guest, hit us up at cyclesworldwide.com or drop a comment. Thank you guys so much.
One Gang Worldwide podcast, brought to you by Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping. Since 1978, Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping has been the trusted name in transporting motorcycles safely across the country. With custom designed pallets and air ride trailers, your bike is secure and protected every step of the way. By choosing Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping, you're supporting a dedicated small business that prioritizes quality and customer satisfaction. Ship with a peace of mind, knowing your motorcycle is in expert hands.
Please visit shippingmymotorcycle.com. That's shippingmymotorcycle.com. And now, back to our show.
Hey, One Gang, today we have a very exciting guest, Paul Yaffe. For those who are not familiar, he is a legendary custom builder and the driving force behind Bagger Nation. So we're pumped to have you today, Paul. We're really looking forward to this episode. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Paul, thanks, man. You're, like I said, you're one of the heroes of mine growing up in this industry myself. So let's just hit it off like we do every podcast, kind of get into a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what were you like as a kid? Where did you grow up? And, just things like that.
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. I was adopted there by the Yaffe family. I started out my life as an orphan. The Yaffes adopted me, and I spent my childhood and teenage years in Southern California, which is, a huge influence and the hot rod mecca, and a lot of creative guys coming out of the SoCal area, especially in the 70s and 80s. I was a rotten kid.
What do you mean rotten?
I was,
got in trouble a lot?
Oh, constantly in and out of jail, and in trouble with police, and just a hoodlum, fighting over time and whatnot, for a lot of reasons. But I basically tortured my parents through my childhood. I ended up making amends for that later in life and had a great relationship with them. But man,
Awesome.
I put them through it. When I have an 11-year-old right now, kind of a late arrival, and I'm terrified he's going to be my kid karma, and he's going to torture me like I do.
That's funny.
So far, so good, but we'll see how it goes. My dad had motorcycles. He had bikes in the garage. He had a Yamaha 250 Enduro that I used to steal regularly whenever I could.
Okay.
And he had a Tri-8 chopper.
Nice.
Long stringer on it. That was his baby. And I never touched that bike. He had all the respect for me on that one. I was afraid to ride too, but
Gotcha.
But back then, so I.
Hey, did he teach you? Did he teach you how to ride?
No, he didn't. I was self-taught. I grew up in a neighborhood that was also full of hoodlums, and their choice of transportation was motorcycles. They were riding Honda 754s, They were riding the KZs, 650s, KZ 900s, Z1s. That was the tricking them out, lowering them, and taking all the inner fenders and lights off, and Kirker, 4-to-1 Kirker pipes wide open, and
Right.
that was, and those were it's funny, I can remember every single one of their names still to this point. They were like my little heroes, older guys, that I tried to hang around. So I was an entrepreneur from a very young age. So these guys liked having me around, because of my choice of business.
Sure. Got it.
Yeah. And
Hence getting in trouble with the police a lot, right?
right. And the constant supply that I had given. So that was
It's fun.
So, that was, an early on finding. Anyway.
Hey, is that when you kind of started with the hands-on stuff with bikes? Is when they were doing all these modifications and stuff? Is that kind of what intrigued you a little bit?
When I was a little young to be working on their bikes, I mean, this is, I was, as early as, 10. I was a mature. I was 10 going on 18 kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can hang out with them and stuff, but I had bicycles and mini bikes and, stuff like that. And the neighborhood I grew up in had a lot of kids. And so we used to, the camaraderie amongst this almost gang-like community of us, there was probably 30 or 40 kids in this neighborhood.
Right.
And we'd all get together and have these, epic days of street football and,
Nice.
torturing the neighbors with, vandalizing their houses and all the shenanigans.
All the fun stuff you do when you're bored and
So we got super creative. We would construction sites back then weren't secure. They didn't have fences around them, and you could just walk up and grab stacks of 8x4s and and sheets of plywood, and we would build tree houses in someone's backyard, or we'd build skateboard ramps, or we'd find an empty lot, and all of us would gang up on this lot and spend our days building like BMX tracks with big giant berms, and then in the afternoons the parents would come and they'd put their cars around the lot and all turn their headlights on, and then we'd race for our parents. So
that's cool.
Killer. Oh, it was big. It was a big community. It was cool. We did. I mean, my God, when I was 11 years old, me and 5 or 6 of my buddies would jump on our bicycles, and we would literally ride out of the valley. I don't know if you're familiar with the LA area, but
yeah, a little bit.
We would ride through the washes and stuff, and we would go 50 miles away from our house. We'd go to the LA's zoo or wherever, right? And we'd go get in trouble, and we'd go bike with other kids in other neighborhoods. And I think about that now, and I look at my 11-year-old, and I'm like, if he rode off the block, I'd want to know where the heck he was. I'd leave at 6 in the morning, and I'd come home at 8 o'clock at night, and nobody would say, well, I'm walking the house. My mom would say, dinner's on the stove or whatever, wash up, and how was your day? Fine.
Right.
No, I agree 100%, man.
Crazy.
It's a different world now, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I was very free to experiment and get in all kinds of trouble and do all kinds of stuff, and I did all of it, so I didn't leave too many stones unturned.
Gotcha. Well, when did that itch come? Like, when did that passion start to fold? Where with the motorcycle side, like where you started to mess with it a little bit?
I always loved everything motorized. The older kids in my neighborhood were building hot rods, and everybody had dirt bikes. I didn't, but they had dirt bikes, and so I'd get to grab something out of their garage. I remember this guy, Johnny Vincent, had I think he had a 125 Yamaha in his garage or whatever, and it was sitting there for years, and I would go over and smoke with him and his friends, and I asked him one day, hey, if I get that thing running, can I ride it? And he was like, yeah, sure, that thing's a piece of junk. It hasn't ridden in years. And so I went out there and, not really knowing anything, I just kind of had a natural mechanical aptitude.
Nice.
I took the carburetor off and cleaned some stuff up. And anyway, it took me a day. I got it running. And then after school, I'd go riding. I'd go riding all the time, and I'd rip it around the neighborhood. And completely, it was illegal to do all that, but whatever. I'm ripping all over the place. And so I remember, that kind of being my first freedom on a motorcycle, right? And feeling the throttle and feeling the power of the bike, and also just getting to go wherever I wanted to go, which we get on bicycles too, but it's different when it's motorized, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
and that's probably around the same time when I started stealing my dad's bikes. He worked in LA, and he'd be gone early in the morning and get back in late in the afternoon, so I could steal his bikes and, just make sure I put it back in the right place and that kind of thing. So I did that. Everybody, all the kids, there was no rigid access to this and that motorized vehicles or whatever. But I bought my first Harley, but I'll just jump forward to that.
Yeah.
Just before I turned 18, I got in some trouble. And I had a choice to either join the Army or go to prison. And so I chose the Army. And
Good choice.
I went and did all my intake stuff and my testing and physicals, and got sworn in and did all of that stuff. But I was still a couple months before I turned 18. So I was on a delayed entry program for a couple of months, and I had been in all kinds of trouble. My parents hadn't seen me quite a while, but they said, you can come home and live with us for a couple months before you go into the Army. And so I did, which was just kind of free reign to get in more trouble while I was waiting to do that. But anyway, long story short, I was up in a forest with some friends of mine, wasted. I fell off a cliff, 100
Holy
foot.
shit.
Jeez. And I fell all the way to the bottom, busted myself all up, broke a bunch of bones, and ended up in the hospital in a big way, like casts on both legs and my arm in a thing, and head trauma, all kinds of shit. And anyway, I went back to the recruiting office, and the recruiter was like, "Yeah, you're never going to be Army material again." He goes, "It's very unlikely you'll make a full recovery that you would consider." But so he gave me a general discharge from the Army. So I never actually went to basic training. I was supposed to go to Alabama for basic training, and then I was going to go to Germany and learn how to repair helicopters. That was, of course, I rocked the mechanical aptitude Army test. And they were like, "You can do anything mechanical you want," kind of thing. So
right.
It was just a natural thing in me, So, and anyway, so right after that, through some friends of my parents, they were lifelong friends of my parents. They had kids my age, and their kids were in trouble too. And they were talking with each other, and Matt, one of the guy that was my age, they said, "Matt's having some really good luck, getting off of coke and stuff. He's going to this Palmer drug abuse program, which was like a program of a bunch of kids supporting each other, trying to, keep each other on straight and narrow." And so I went to this Palmer drug abuse program meeting, which is like in church, kind of like an AA meeting, but for kids. And I got hooked. There was this gal there that I thought was fantastic, and she paid some attention to me. And I was a rather not good-looking kid. I was strung out, kind of a junkie, and I weighed 127 pounds and long, raggedy red hair, kind of weird looking. And anyway, this chick paid attention to me, and so I started going back to these meetings just to see her, right? And and because I had a crush on her, and so the teachings there got a hold of me somehow, and I stopped using drugs, and I stopped all that stuff, and I got sober. This is right about 18, probably 2 or 3 months before I turned 18, all the same period of time. And I was still, when I started going to these meetings, I was in a wheelchair and had my foot in a cast or my leg in a cast, and I'm still all busted up from my accident. And but next thing you know, I had a couple of years sober, and
Nice.
going to AA meetings all over the hill, and I was working, and I was doing different stuff, waiting tables, and I was working in this metal factory, and then I got a job. This family used to come in this restaurant I worked at. This family would come in this restaurant and have Sunday dinner with me, and I would wait on them every Sunday. And this guy Morty was a shoe guy. He was a career shoe. Yeah, they call them shoe dogs. Yeah, and he liked me, and he was opening a shoe store. And he asked me if I would come work for him at his shoe store. He said he would guarantee me that I would make more money than I was making waiting tables and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so whatever. He said it's full of hot chicks and, blah, blah.
Yeah, that was it.
Well, like,
I don't know.
right, it was a ladies shoe store, so.
Right.
Anyway, so I did. I went and worked for him. And before you knew it, I was managing his store. Then I started designing shoes with some of the shoe manufacturing companies. That was my first kind of designing job. And that turned into a really big thing. The company grew really big, and I ended up having ownership in it. And I'm 19 years old, 20 years old.
Nice, man. Nice.
And I'm riding motorcycles. I own a first bike I bought brand new from Harley was a Sportster. In 1985. I want to say was the first brand new Harley. They had just come out with the Evo Sportster. The 883. I bought one. It was $39.95. I remember because within a year you could trade it back in and get your full $39.95 back towards a bigger bike if you want, which I ended up doing as well. So, but I was riding motorcycles. Just loved riding them, and I would play with the bike in my garage. Back then, you would chrome some stuff up. You put bullet turn signals on your bike.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of LaPera seats.
Of course.
Bob LaPera Senior, not Christine and Bob, who run the thing now. They were kids but Bob lived around the corner from me, so like he would make me custom seats for my bike. Way back when, and so I would go over and he'd make me and him design some seats for bikes, and I ended up. So I ended up selling that Sportster, and I remember it's funny, I didn't know a lot about the bikes, right? I had a mechanics,
right,
but I didn't know just, Harley or four-stroke engine theory, or I didn't have a foundation in that stuff.
Understand.
So I would go to Van Nuys Harley Davidson, and I would ask them like, hey, how much to put on turn signals, right? Custom truck. And they'd tell me it's $200 or whatever. So I'd make sure I had the $200, and then I'd try it myself. So if I screwed it up,
you can just bring it, they can repair it. Yeah.
Everyone fix it for me, right? So,
right.
But that's how I started learning. And there was a shop in Hollywood called Showcase Cycles. It was right off of Melrose, La Brea. And this guy, Steve, who owned the shop, let me hang around there. I would go and in my free time and work as parts counter and unpack boxes and hang up inventory. And I get to, I'd go in the back with the mechanics, who I'm still friends with, those mechanics today, by the way.
Wow.
They would let me hang out and clean their oil pans, or, they'd show me how to drive a fork seal, or, this or that. And they'd let me, assist them kind of, right? So, so I got a lot of experience with that. And then there was Bartell's Harley Davidson. And so between Bartell's and Van Nuys and this Showcase Cycles, I was hanging around motorcycles a lot, right?
Gotcha.
And then through a series of events, I ended up getting out of the shoe business. I left that phase of my life, and I started working at nightclubs at night. I was a doorman at local LA nightclubs. In LA, the more popular nightclubs, they put a rope around the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they build a crowd outside, and then I stand there in a suit, my sunglasses on, and pick,
right.
and I got a slab of beef on each side. wait. And I would pick people, you know, and the owner of the club would come out, tell me what he wanted the mix of the club to look like that night. And
Yeah.
so I was good at it. I was good. I was a smart ass, and I was a wise guy or whatever. And I was good at being a doorman. It's, you know, of course people would, you know, tip the shit out of you, and, you know, that kind of, and it was a good gig. You know, you were kind of, you know, I was clubbing, you know, I was just old enough to drink when I was sober. So I didn't have to do, I wasn't doing anything. Right. So I was clean. So, I ended up staying clean for 20 years after that. So I ended up, I ended up having my first drink in a bar, when I was 38 years old.
Wow.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's
crazy.
I did all my heavy damage when I was younger. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank God you're here. And, you know, a lot of things could have turned for the worse. So growing up in South Boston, I've lost a couple of buddies of mine to stupid.
yeah, it happens.
So as you were in this stage, did you end up ever? So you got this interest in the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. Can you talk about when you made that decision?
Sure. So that was all really where we were just when I was just talking about this kind of bike scene I was involved with in LA. LA was cool. There was these club promoters. They'd put on bike nights at night, you know, in these Hollywood clubs, and the street would fill up with bikes. And at this time I had sold the Sportster. I had gotten a Softail. The Softail got wrecked. It actually got knocked over by a friend of mine's partner, and blah, blah, blah. But I ended up customizing that bike. Started to customize it in my garage and learn more. And I was hanging out the scene. So Rob and Willie, who were the two mechanics that worked at Showcase Cycles, and I told you I remained friends with, there was a period where I asked them, like, how did you guys learn all this shit, right? And how do you know all this stuff? And, we went to Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. And I'm like, well, what's that? Well, it's in Arizona, and you go to Arizona, dude, you should go and totally have the bug. You should,
Right.
You'll love it. So I jumped on a plane and flew to Arizona and checked out Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. And I thought it was cool. And so I registered. I went home, told my parents I was going to move to Arizona, loaded up my cat and my girlfriend, U-Haul, and we rented a little townhouse here, and that was that. I just picked up and boom.
So you never actually worked in any local shops or anything like that.
Well,
You just got the interest from those
I wouldn't
three
say
different.
I worked. I moonlighted, right? So I was a self-taught fabricator. I wasn't afraid of much, so I had no problem trying things. I had bought a Sears drill press, and I bought a little milling cable that you clamp onto the table of the drill press, and it has a little X and Y wheels you turn, and you know, and that's plus or minus like an eighth of an inch tolerance. It totally moves while you're right. But that was like, for me, that was like a little mill, right? At the local metal store, and I'd buy some little sheets of aluminum, and I was making side mount license plates for my bikes, and I was making little mirrors and little billet pieces, right? That I wanted for the bikes that I was customizing. So I had these two bikes. I had this Softail, a Softail Custom, and then I had an FXR Peak. I had a police FXR that I bought from a police auction, the California Highway Patrol auction. Turns out a lot of FXRPs, and it's funny, that's how I ended up making a living when I moved to Arizona. I'll segue around a little bit. When I moved to Arizona, I never thought of looking for a job or, you know, that kind of shit. I had a little money put away, and but quickly I ended up, you know, needing a job, and you couldn't find a job in the 80s in Arizona, man. It was in a depression. You could not find a job. You go to a certain K to get a job cutting boxes open, and there'd be 200 people in line.
Wow.
Crazy. And so I couldn't find a job. And my partner, Jack, who still works with me today, he was my partner at school. I met Jack at school. I had started clinics at school. The first 8-12 weeks you're in school, you're just doing book work, right? You're in a class, and you're learning 4-stroke engine theory, and you're kind of learning how to learn. You're learning how to find information. You're learning how to use service manuals, stuff like that. So, and you have to pair up with somebody. Well, I paired up with Jack, and me and Jack became good friends. And so what we started doing is I had a friend who ran the California Highway Patrol auction. He was a club customer of mine. So the nice thing about being a doorman is everybody wants to, you go to a restaurant.
Be on your
you
good
go
side.
to a restaurant in Hollywood, you don't wait for a table. You can't pay for your meal, because when everybody shows up at the door of your club, they want the same flavor.
Right.
So I have this little rock star status because I was doorman. Anyway,
But
so
not in
the
Arizona.
the highway patrol guy used to always make sure that we would win a couple bikes. It was a sealed bid process. You turn in an envelope, which you create on a bike, right? And then they open the envelope, and whoever's the highest bid wins, right? So we would, spiff him a little bit, and we'd always, call us, and it's happened like every 2 months or something. We'd buy a couple of FXRPs. Jack and I would jump on a flight to LA. We'd get there about 5 PM, go over the bikes, make sure they were okay, and then we'd ride them back across the desert in the middle of the night to Phoenix. We'd pull into Phoenix around 7 AM, throw the bikes in the garage, red eye it to school, and then we were at school from 7 to 3.
Wow.
So we often fell asleep.
Yeah.
I
You
bet.
think?
But then we would take those police bikes and we'd tear them apart, and we'd go to the swap meets, the local swap meets, and buy stock FXR parts that people were taking off their bikes. FXRs were real popular in the 90s. And then we would kind of customize them and sell them in the pig. And that's how we use that money to put ourselves through school.
Nice,
Smart.
man. Yeah.
While you were
just,
in the
just by
institute.
buying and selling bikes, huh? Wow.
Well, that and a funny thing happened. One day we were sitting in class, and this lady in a suit comes into class, and she grabs one of the students in our class and, has a few words we think that they can't hear. And then she takes him out of class, right? And the guy's leaving, and he's like thanking the teacher for his time and, sorry, but I mean, he was leaving for good, right? So I looked, I was like, what kind of trouble is this guy in, right?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
what'd he do?
So I asked the teacher, hey, why'd that guy get pulled out of class? Oh, well, he was here on a state scholarship, and he wasn't keeping an 80% grade average. So they pulled him, and I said, well, what kind of scholarship? Oh, he's a recovering addict, and he was in this rehabilitation thing. And so I was like,
Right.
I'm a recovering addict.
Yeah.
Right.
So I looked into the state program, and I went down to the state and applied for this help. And I had to see a psychologist and sit in front of a board of people and tell them my story and, whatever and blah, blah. Anyway, at the end of the whole thing, they ended up paying for my entire school. The state of Arizona gave me $14,000 to pay off my student loans. And then when I graduated, they bought me a huge toolbox full of tools.
No way.
All kinds of shit, and helped me open my first shop, which was American Motorcycle Company. And I opened that shop here in 1991. Opened that shop with the state's help. And then they were supposed to come every few months and monitor me and see how things were going for several years, right? And I think like the second time they showed up, there was 50 bikes out back and crazy bustling going on at the shop. And they were like, you're going to be just fine.
Right.
They left and I never heard from them again. So, they took the state of Arizona, took care of my school. And I'm sure they've made it back.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the U.S. for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a Butt Buffer for every rider's style. Get your Butt Buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
a million times over. With
Hey,
those-
Paul.
Well-
Let me ask you this. In '91, when you guys opened up American Legend Motorcycle Company, was this a vision that you had, or was that something that the state?
Oh, there's always a funny story, right? So yeah,
Right.
one of these days I'll write a book.
You should.
So
Yes, please.
this guy, Greg Bostriani, he was a music producer, and he lived here in Arizona, and he was kind of this, convertible 930 drive-in, big Italian goofball
Right.
kind of dude, like a bear, right?
Right.
But she pulled up to my garage one day in his Porsche, all in his fancy pants, and got out of his car, and he was there to buy one of these FXRs from the ad, right? He wanted to buy this, and he was buying it. He was helping his friend buy the bike. He was with this other guy, Bill, a photographer guy, who ended up doing some photography for me. Anyway, Greg comes up and, looks at the bike and kind of strutting around, and he's trying to lowball me and, da-da-da, and I'm like, no, I think it's worth the money we're asking. And, he's like, well, me and my friend, we'll go have some lunch and, we'll drop by afterwards and see if you've come to your senses. And I will think, whatever it's, Anyway, so he left and they did go to lunch. Well, lucky for me, right after that, some other guy from the ad pulled up, gave me the cash, took the bike, gone.
Nice.
So an hour later, Greg comes back with his buddy who he's supposed to be helping buy this bike. And he's like, so, hey, what, you have any thoughts? And I'm like, yeah, the bike's gone, man. Yeah, I sold it right after you left. And he was so embarrassed, right? And his tactics just didn't work.
They failed.
It wasn't any purpose of mine. It's just the way it worked out, right? And so God was smiling on me that day. So
That's right. Cash is.
so he got huffy. He got a little huffy with me. He was, he was embarrassed and he was pissed that, acted like I sold the bike out from under him more first. You should have just
Sure.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I would have, that kind of thing. And anyway, so the next day he called me from the ad, and he called me and he was like, I like you, man. Kind of thing. He goes,
Right.
you got to put me in my place or whatever. And I wasn't trying to, you know what I mean? And anyway, we ended up striking up a friendship. And he had a soft tail like the one I had when I was in LA, and he wanted it customized and asked if I would customize it. So it was kind of my first paying customizing job, right? Yeah. And so he brought the bike over and trusted me to give it to me in my garage and let me start doing stuff to it. And by then I had kind of customized some Harleys. I hadn't built a ground up bike yet. I hadn't built a scratch built bike yet, but I had, we had done a lot of XMXRs, and Jack and I bought a couple bikes in a paper, in the newspaper, and kind of put a paint job on them and cleaned them up and made a few bucks on it. And we had a few bikes in my garage, just friends' bikes that we were tinkering with while we were in school. And so we kind of had this shop, right, in my garage, right? It was kind of like this. There was always 8 or 10 bikes in my garage, and Jack and I at night would work on the bikes, and so I ended up printing these business cards that said Polly's Cycle Shop. Oh, shoot. And I remember there was this little starburst on the card, and it said forgotten craftsmanship. And it was something you could pick out while you were making the cards. And I thought that was cool. So I put that on the thing. And anyways, we had this little shop, right? So as I stayed friends with Greg, and we would end up going out, at night clubbing and, whatever, and hanging out, riding motorcycles. And we had this little group of friends that we would, go on weekend rides with. And it was, so I had a little sense of community there, right? And
Right.
so as school was moving on, Greg was like, well, what are your plans? When you get out of school, what are you going to do? He said, well, I don't know, maybe I'll go back to LA and work at Showcase or I don't know. And he said, well, why don't you open your own shop? He's like, and I said, well, I don't really know anything about that, right? I don't, and even when I was doing the shoot thing, right, I was partners in the business, but I wasn't running the business.
Right.
Yeah. I was just a kid, right? The older guys were running.
Correct.
Right. And so he talked me into going to Scottsdale Community College and taking some business classes. And,
Wow.
And he
Nice.
helped me get into the classes, and it took me down there and said, you want to take this? Want to do that? Want to take this? So I started taking some night classes. So I was in school MMI during the day, and I was at Scottsdale Community College at night taking business classes. And this comes full circle to you saying, did you have a plane? So in that, while I was in that school, I had to create a thesis on starting my business, right? And I'll bet you
still got it? Killer,
While you're
man.
looking
That's
for it,
sweet.
if the
That's it.
state didn't help you out,
Wow.
that's wild.
This is my thesis on how to start a motorcycle show. And in here, it's I don't know, it's about 10 pages.
Nice.
And in here it says startup cost projections for service, shop machinery,
That's
Get
awesome.
More specialty tool list, blah, blah, blah. And then it talks about the previous pages outline the complete needs of a full service Harley-Davidson service facility. As you can imagine, to anticipate every item needed for day-to-day business would be impossible without being open for business. And it goes on and on and on. It's the cost of everything. And basically, this
That's
is
awesome. You
like
still have
a
that.
business plan. This is a business plan for me to propose to somebody to invest in a business with me, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is what I had to do to graduate school.
So
Wow.
Paul, if you
That's
didn't
cool.
get the scholarship from the state for MMI, you probably wouldn't have been able to gone to the community college.
Well, so the college wasn't expensive at all. It wasn't. It
Okay.
wasn't expensive.
But you wouldn't have to be working to foot the bill for the student loans.
Well. So what happened? Yeah, I mean, I would have had to. I think usually with student loans, they give you a little grace period, like a year after you get out of school. Then they come looking for you to pay up. So, but another thing that happened is Steve, the guy who owns Showcase Cycles, the one I spoke of in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He also was. We had similar entrepreneurial spirits, and he also delved in different types of businesses, not just motorcycles. And I guess so. Steve got in a little trouble with his extracurricular activities and was going to go do a little time at a U.S. country club.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So he ended up shutting his business down. I didn't know any of this, but Steve got busted for whatever he got busted for, and he ended up packing up his whole shop.
Wow.
Everything in a U-Haul, right? All the parts, all the counters, all the pieces of bikes, frames, all the stuff out of his shop. He put it all in the U-Haul and he drove to Arizona and gave it to me. Gave it to you. Yeah, I didn't know he was done. He pulled up one of my house. He called and said he was coming to visit, but I was like, really, would love to see you. I just figured he was going to fly in and, come say hi. So Jack and I are working in the garage and Steve pulls up in this big U-Haul and tells us the story and says, I didn't know what to do with all this stuff, but he says, I know you'll do something great with this stuff. He goes, I know that you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. He goes, and so, here's your start. And there was machinery in there, all kinds of shit.
That is
So
sweet.
we spent the rest of the day unloading this U-Haul. And one of the things that came out of this U-Haul was tons of parts, was a Paco rigid frame and a shovel head motor.
Nice.
There was a 4-speed tranny in it, a ratchet top tranny, a old set of Heritage forks, and
That is so cool.
so Jack and I started piecing some of this stuff together, right? And we made kind of this rolling chassis, and I got really excited about it, right? I got super excited about it, and I was like, dude, I'm going to build a ground up chopper, right? And I had never done that. So this is, I'm going to say this is 1988, probably 88, 89 when this is happening. So I should go.
Wait, what do you like?
I should run into the other room and grab this picture of me standing in my.
Do it.
Yeah, go
We
get
got
it.
time. Go ahead.
Give me 30 seconds.
It'd be awesome
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, I'll show it to
This is awesome, man. What a journey, man. And that's just
you. So I brought you a couple of fun pictures. So
Sweet.
this is me with my little milk mustache in 1988. That's me standing. I don't know if you can
sweet.
really
I can see
it.
it. I can see it.
So that's my first ground up chopper that I ever built. And I'm wearing my little motorcycle mechanic's hat. And I got I think I got about 12 hairs of a mustache.
Yes.
And that's my bed sheet that's hanging behind me in the garage.
We just lost Serge.
That picture
It'll be,
there for me. And later,
that is so cool.
remind me later, I'll tell you a story about that bike.
Gotcha.
Rigid frame with a shovel head motor so that was your first true ground frame off build, right?
Yeah, and I just 2 years ago I built an exact reproduction of that bike that I keep in my garage and I ride it.
No way.
My wife still, and that bike is right now it's sitting in my showroom. But I built it. I'll tell you the story behind it. But I built an exact reproduction.
That's cool.
My instructor at school let me bring parts of this bike, like the motor and the trainee, let me bring it to school. And some of the students that were interested, we tore it apart and rebuilt it at school as like an extra credit project.
That's
so
cool.
The school was real cool about letting us do some of that. And then I ended up selling that bike to a guy who lives in Oregon. And that was the seed money for opening up my first shop in 1991. That bike and Greg, like the guy who I met at the garage.
Yep.
He gave me 10 grand. I sold the bike for 10 grand. And a friend of ours, this guy, Owen Lewis, who lived in Southern California, gave us 10 grand. And the three of us opened American Legend Motorcycle Company in 1991. That's how the shop got.
How many mechanics did you, like, who was working because you guys started with service and repair first, right? You guys were kind of focused on the service and repair part, and then the custom building came in a little bit later.
Well, so there was one guy who was a parts runner.
Right.
There was one guy who did accounting and payroll and stuff. There was one guy who did all the customer relations. There was a mechanic and a fabricator, and they were all me.
There was one employee. That's so funny. That's funny.
It was just
holy shit.
me. Yeah, I worked day and night, barely slept, and I did everything. I'd get up whenever I could. I'd run for parts, and then usually at nights is when I actually worked on the bikes, because all day I was, doing business stuff.
Right, of course.
When we opened the shop, it got super popular very fast, and so real quickly, I had 5 or 6 employees. I had a couple of mechanics. They would come and go. I had a girl, Teresa, who ran my parts counter, and kind of wrote the checks and answered phones and that kind of stuff. And then a friend of mine, Brian Adams, he was working for his father's time. He left and came and started. He had a big bike pension, came and started working at the shop, and he would sit around and talk bikes with customers all day long. He'd get them all excited about doing custom stuff to their bikes. And so the shop got really busy really, really quickly.
Did you have a lot of competition in the area? I mean, I know Arizona's a great state for bikes, but was there a lot of businesses the same?
Yeah, at the time there was nothing. So the kind of the Evos had just exploded.
Right.
And there was 2 custom shops, and most of them were really kind of old school shops. They were working on panheads and shovel heads.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't really got into the
newer stuff.
What I'll call the rugby movement, right? Which the rich urban biker, that saved the motor company, right? So that was just starting, and they weren't into it. And then there was a couple of Harley shops. There was Buddy Stubbs, Harley Davidson, Glendale, Harley Davidson. I think at the time that was it.
That's
so
cool.
It wasn't that much big of a deal. There was a bike scene. There was certainly a bike scene in Arizona. It's a nice place to ride. And
absolutely.
There was a couple of clubs. AJ was here. The Dirty Dozen was a really big club here. Arizona didn't have a lot of money yet, right? The real money hadn't come to Arizona yet. There wasn't a big nightlife. There wasn't a big club scene. I mean, Arizona now is like fucking Vegas. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. Here. It's nuts.
Everybody's leaving California to Arizona, so
sure. At the end, there'd be a lot of Chicago, a lot of Illinois. But anyway, at the time, it had more of a small town feel, right? But there was like one mall. You never saw exotic cars and stuff like that, And anyway, the business did well. And I started I started customizing a lot more. I started building some pretty radical bikes.
Right.
For the time,
Hey,
for what
let me ask you this. When you kicked off, you guys, you said that you guys kind of took off, which was great. But as a small business, what were some of the challenges you were facing consistently? Like, what were some of the things you had to overcome as a small business at that time?
So I think the shop was making more money than we knew what to do with.
Wow.
Which was
killer.
good. Yeah, it was very successful, very fast. And when I say that, I mean it wasn't doing millions of dollars.
No, I know, man, but you guys
But
were making profit.
It was super successful, and
Yeah.
I had already like even in my business plan, it basically states exactly what I've become. It says I want to create a line of products. I want to sell them to other builders. I want to be famous. I want to,
Right.
build all these crazy custom bikes. I want magazine features. It says all the stuff I want to
so
do.
awesome.
All my goals. And back then it was kind of a magic time to be a builder. Everything was new and billet was just hitting the scene. And I was really into machining. I was really into making billet parts and designing billet parts. And so I think like any growing business, I didn't know anything about running a manufacturing business. I didn't know anything about marketing. So I had one of the first problems I had was I had opened up this shop called American Legend Motorcycle Company. I created a product line that I called Beyond Bolt-On. And then my name was Paul Yaffe. And I wanted you to recognize all three of those as the same, right? It's a really hard thing to do, right?
Yeah.
To have three brands and have them all recognized as the same.
Right.
So the business, like I said, took off. It was doing really well. My partners weren't really wanting to be in the motorcycle business. They were really kind of giving me a leg up. So in 1993, I started the process of buying them out, and I put together a deal to buy both of their interests, buy the 66% of the company back, which I did. And that went super smooth. But once the corporation stuff was done, I learned this lesson about marketing, and I changed the name to Paul Yaffe Origins. And that encompassed everything. That encompassed the name of the shop, the name of the parts, the name of the bikes. So everything was a Paul Yaffe Origins. So it encompassed, obviously my name was in the title. So we thought that would be a much more cohesive way of
Absolutely
introducing ourselves to the world. So
right.
We had a couple of big show bikes that were out on tour that we were dragging to shows and showing, and they were doing well. We accidentally won the Laughlin River Run show, which back then was a huge Southern California show, and all the builders would show up there with all the big, I remember the first show like that. I put this FXR I did in, and Arla Ness was in the show.
Wow.
I had a bike in the show. Pat Kennedy.
Wow.
Donnie Smith, Dave Carowitz, Forget, on and on. These names were
legends. Yeah.
We're like, these are my heroes, right?
Right.
We're writing them out in the magazine, and I won that show. They put me in the radical class, which is with all these guys, and I ended up being them all, right? And nobody had any idea who I was.
Sick.
That is wild.
Red hair down to my ass, and all red hair, and I remember after that, sitting in front of the Hilton Hotel, which was the hangout then. It was called the Flamingo. And I was kind of basking in my glory. I had my bike out there, and I was hoping somebody would come ask me a question or pay any kind of attention to me, right? And this guy, Keith Ball, came over and was like, what is this bike? And tell me about this bike. And I told him about it. And turns out Keith Ball was the editor of Easy Rider magazine. And he was starting a new magazine called VQ, which was a large format, kind of glossy cover. And he wanted to do a master builder article about me in this magazine. And, and I was like, dude, I ain't no master builder. I've done one. kind of.
Right.
But he was all about it, and so he did. He sent photographers over to Arizona to my shop, and we did this article, and that was the first magazine article that ever came out on us. Was in BQ magazine, which was an Easy Rider Paisano publication.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the master builder article. And you come in my shop, there's rows of magazine boards, on the walls.
I can imagine.
It's the first one when you come through the door. That's the first article you see. And it's funny. I got my little John Lennon specs on and this fancy little vest. My long hair's all cool. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
I look
That
like
is
a
cool.
roommate.
That is cool.
So
Well, I wanted to ask you, when you said that the shop got popular pretty quickly. Was it a cumulative rise, or would you identify, or can you identify one thing as your big breakthrough, like the magazine or, one of the bikes?
So a couple of things. One, I lived, ate, slept, drove motorcycles, right? That was all I wanted, right? So I was going to bike nights, anything that had anything to do with motorcycles, I would be there, right? Trying to show off, trying to talk about my stuff, trying to, just trying to be involved, right? And the motorcycle scene in Arizona was small, and nobody was doing custom stuff like I was doing. Nobody was doing chrome exchange. Nobody was doing, ape hangers or motor work or custom paint. And I had outlets for all of that stuff. I had made myself connections to guys to be able to offer all of that stuff, custom upholstery, whatever. And so the guys that were buying these new Harleys, the Rubs, let's call them, were bringing me these bikes, and these guys were, upward professionals. These are doctors and lawyers and real estate guys, and they have tons of cash, and they're all looking to be pimped, and I'm the guy in the middle to bring it to them, right? So I'm the penis extension.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was they were just lining them up, man, and they didn't care about the money, and it wasn't very expensive back then compared to how things are now. But
Paul, what were you building them for roughly? What was at that time? What were your customs going for? Like 15, 20?
I was probably $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And we had cases, big glass cases full of chrome exchange. We would go to swap meets and buy all the stock parts, and then have later that we have them ready for you to go. So you could come in on Monday and say, I want chrome forks, chrome switch housings, chrome floor controls, and I want my rear wheel chrome.
Right.
I already had it all sitting in the case.
Oh, gosh.
So I could take it all apart, put it on Friday night. You're ready to go to bike night with your bike on chrome.
Right.
Take all your shit, chrome it, have it for the next guy.
Yeah.
This stuff and that and labor, and we were really good at motor work. We had this great little hop up package we would do the Evos, getting great horsepower out of them, giving them lots of attitude. And then I think it started out kind of like the real radical bikes, like stretch tanks and sheet metal and lots of billet parts. And I did a few of those for myself, and I was lucky because Owen, I think you remember me telling you that Owen had bet. I had a couple bikes that there's no way I could afford to finish. Right? They were kind of sitting in the corner, and they were concept things that I had done. And Owen was at the shop one day, and he was like, "What are these bikes, man?" He goes, "These chassis, like amazing. What is this?" Like, "Oh, it's something I'm going to build someday." And I go, "I can't afford it. I don't have any money to do that." And he's like, "Dude, here's my check. Finish it.
Jeez.
Gonna build it.
Yes.
Right, build it." He goes, "This would be great for the shop, and you got to finish this shit. You got to show people what you can do." So I probably spent $60,000 on that bike, which back then
that's a lot back then. It was 200 grand.
Holy shit! So, and I did and that bike won everything. That's the bike that built all the guys, beat all the guys at Laughlin, and actually,
Gotcha.
look here. I'm gonna grab one more picture.
Yeah, please.
So this is Owen, Greg, and myself, and the FXR.
That is sick.
Yeah, that's I forget what show that is. Might be the Oakenrunkter show. I can't remember what show it is, but that's
Incredible.
that was like the first, chilling bike.
Is that the one that they did the article on in the new magazine?
Yeah, it was in the master builder.
It was in a master build. Okay.
Yeah, it even says American Legend Motorcycle Company presents 93 Harley Davidson FXLRs. Right. So that's the time, but that's Craig there.
That's so
And then
cool.
that's Owen. And that's the bike we ended up
That
building.
thing
It was
is so
much-
sweet.
There's so much building on it. And then, the artist Eric Herman?
Yep.
He came into my shop. He was just starting out back then, and he saw that bike. And one of his first motorcycle themed paintings was the engine on that bike. He did the art is the picture. I have the original. It's called Billet Proof because the whole motor's all billet. And we made a friend of mine, who I was actually sober with, this guy, Joel Knoll, we called him Bones. And Joel was a 30-year journeyman machinist, had a full mill lathe in his garage. And Joe and I loved to tinker. I would go over to his house at night. He'd come over to the shop at night. We would hang out all the time and come and make these crazy billet things, right? So like I don't know if you can't really see it. There's a headlight on this bike. And back then, nobody knew what billet was. Nobody was carving stuff out of aluminum. But that headlight, we machined that headlight out of a solid ingot of aluminum the size of a telephone pole. And we put it in the lathe and machined a whole custom headlight out of it. Now you got headwinds and,
Right.
and those things are actually spun. They're not cut. But that was an actual, 4-pound
Good.
that
That's
we made.
amazing, man. To be able to take that amount of aluminum and create that's sick.
Yeah, it was crazy what we would do. And Joel just loved to do it. And unfortunately, early on, Joel and I, we would do it. Joel was part of the shop. He hung out at the shop all the time. He was kind of a partner of ours. Anyway, we would take a bunch of our customers and we would ride up in the mountains above Arizona to this town called Sholo. And there was a lodge there that had about 20 cabins. And we would have a customer appreciation weekend where we'd invite our best customers. We'd all ride up there. We'd all rent all the cabins. And we'd spend a weekend up there, going for rides up in the mountains and just partying and having a good time.
Right.
And the second one of those rides, Joel and I had got up in the morning and we were heading down into town. There was a hub chapter event going on. And an old lady made a left-handed turn in front of us. Joel here rang the door. It killed him.
Killed him?
Yeah, killed him. Yeah, he died in my arms.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
That was the end of Joel. So, I'm looking, I have some memorials over on my wall here. I was just looking over at them while we're telling that story.
Man.
So, but yeah, that was a bad day. But, so Joel's wife and family ended up staying friendly with us. I actually took care of her for a long time. And they still come. His great grandchildren and his nieces come and visit, and they'll come and visit the shop.
Cool.
And
that's cool.
Because their dad's memory and influence is still around the shop and stuff, and so they still come visit
special,
today.
man.
It's pretty cool. But
That is, man. That is.
and I bought Joel's machinery from his wife, and the mill and lathe that are in my fab shop that I do my rudimentary prototyping on.
Yeah.
Are still Joel's equipment.
Cool.
Man, that's
I still
really
have
cool.
that same mill and lathe, and
They-
they're old.
They don't make them like they used to. Man.
We've got duct tape wrapped all over them. They're all
Hey, yes.
Yes.
but I still use them. They
Still produce, man. They still produce.
Yeah, it's still. I don't think I'll ever get rid of those. But,
Nah.
but yeah, I still make parts on today, and I like to think he's watching over me.
Yeah, for sure.
Amen. So you go from this rising in popularity shop to winning the world's most beautiful motorcycle 3 times in a row. How did that impact the trajectory of your business? And also, if you can touch on the pressure, that's one thing that lots of folks don't think about as a builder, winning an award like that and gaining that recognition, the kind of pressure that puts on you has to be pretty insane.
Yeah, I don't know about pressure, but I'll tell you how my mind operates. So at that time we're going through the 90s and we're building tons of bikes and there's all kinds of magazines and we're getting tons of attention. we're building lots of billet product, and we're learning how to be an accessories company that, because all these bikes we build, I dream of these. Oh, I wish we had this, right? But it doesn't exist. So I will make it, right? And then it becomes a part on the bike. And then other people go, that's really cool. Where did that come from? And we make more, and then you want to put it on your bike. And so we're selling to a lot of builders. And so you were also talking to me about the challenges, of a young startup business.
Yeah.
Capital is one for sure, because I didn't have, $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000 to put on shelves, right, of inventory. I didn't have, before that $8,000 an ad to put magazine
into advertising.
I didn't have any of that. I didn't have that backing, right?
Right.
I was just a sole proprietor, bike builder, run around, do everything kind of guy. Sure. And Hen really started to figure out how to make money, I guess, right? So, and I didn't care, right? I was so into what I was doing. All I cared about is that my energy fueled my passion, right?
Yeah.
I didn't care about, I'm driving an old beat up pickup truck, and I'm super thrilled that I'm able to own a motorcycle. And, I'm just, it's all motorcycles, right?
Yeah.
So everything I earn goes back into the business.
That's right.
And, and there's also you couldn't stop me. If you let me start building the bike for you, I would go crazy on all the shit I wanted to do to it and all the things I would dream of. And I'd be calling you up, dude, you got,
yeah. Do this, do that.
Passion.
Well, that can't cost, I don't know. We got to do it, Well, I don't know. Well, fuck it then. I'm just going to do it anyway. And don't worry about it, but I got to do it. And, it was that kind of shit. I was obsessed.
Yeah.
Right? I was obsessed with the final product. And you just couldn't get in the way of the passion I had.
And that's what makes you who you are today, man.
And if I started something, I had to finish it the way I wanted to finish it. Right. You had to let me go.
So task driven.
And so, so I got some guys frustrated because things took longer than they were supposed to. Things cost more than they were supposed to. That's just the nature of the custom world, right? So, I'm building a car right now, a 50 Merc.
Nice.
Cool.
I've got it in a friend of mine's shop in El Paso, who's helping me with the chassis and the metalwork, right? I am on the other side of the coin now with a guy who's super crazy passionate and just wants to do all this crazy shit. And doesn't count beans and doesn't care about money. And
right.
So every time I go see him, he's like, oh, yeah, I got to put another 100 hours. Dude, this has to stop somewhere. And he's like, no, it's got to get finished. And so I go home and I tell my wife, I'm like, I'm totally getting my karma building in. Carlos is doing to me what I would do to other people, but I get it. I get it. And so she says, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to let him do his thing. Well, what if it costs a couple $100,000? I go, well, then it's going to cost a couple $100,000. No.
Right.
I'm going to let him do it. I'm going to let him finish the car the way he wants to, and it'll take as long as it takes. And, I said, I know it'll be amazing,
Right.
We'll figure it out.
It's crazy.
So that's funny. But that's so we were, it's funny. It didn't seem like there was problems, right? Or at least the financing and the money and all that stuff. It never got me down. I didn't care. I wasn't doing this to make money. You know what I mean? I was doing it because I had to, because it's what I did. And, so there was, financial problems. There was ups and downs. I remember once we made the biggest, we had this product called a radius side mount. It was like a curved license plate with the tail light on it. And it also held your brake. And it was a big part. We sold a lot, right? And it was a very elaborate part. It was expensive to make and expensive to buy. And we think we made 500 of them, which was monstrous.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It was huge. And we sent them to California to be plated. And I guess the machining on them was so nice that the plater thought that they were anodized.
Wow.
So he took the whole order and put it in a strip tank to strip that anodizing off. Well, there was no anodizing off, so it ate the aluminum.
Oh, man.
So he destroyed his huge order of parts, right? I don't know, maybe it's $50,000 worth of parts, right? And I have paid for it, right? I mean, I had a machine shop make them for me, but I was on terms with him and hadn't paid for them yet. And so the guy who took the order to the plater was ditching me, right? He didn't want to come clean or tell me what happened, and maybe he was running around trying to find somebody who could fix them. Right, he was running around trying to find somebody who could sand them or polish them or them or figure out something. And finally, like he was ditching. Somebody called me, and we ended up jumping in the truck, and we drove to California, and we caught him. Right, like literally, like pull him out of his car and put him on the hood.
Right.
Fuck, and he came clean, and then even in his truck, he had a bunch of these parts in his trunk because he was still running around trying to get. And they were. Right. And so I remember that was a monstrous thing for us. So I came home $50,000 in debt and no way to recover it. Right. And I had to call Joe, the machine shop. And I said, hey, that whole order of parts got ruined. And I don't have the money to pay you. I go, and he's like, well, what do you mean you don't have the money to pay me? I'm like, well, dude, I was going to sell parts and this is a big move for us, right? And so we ended up having a conversation, and I told him, I said, look, I'm good for the money. I'll get you the money. And I said, but if you cut me off and you don't make me any more parts, right? And all of a sudden I'm out of parts. I said, there's no way I'll ever be able to pay you back. Right? So let's make some kind of deal where, you'll continue to make parts. I'll make less money on the parts, and I'll give you a piece of everything we make till we get square. And he did that. That's cool. And I did, and it took 6 months or a year or something to get him paid back for that. But we ended up getting it done, and he trusted me. And I've always had those kind of relationships with my suppliers and my vendors, and we're all kind of family and friends, and sometimes shit happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we're dealing with something in my company right now. We're going to this huge embezzlement thing with one of my accountants who's been with me for 15 years.
Wow.
And this just happened 4th of July. We just found out. And so my wife has come into the company, and she's working with my CPAs, and we had to hire a bunch of attorneys, and we're doing all this forensic accounting, and it's one thing to find out that we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and that this lady stole from us, and we had no idea.
15 years, man, with you, and
then just sitting by my side, planning business with me, and then stealing from me the whole time. But what some of the worst things she did is she reported to us that we were current with vendors, and these are all friends and family and stuff. And then she was taking the money that she reported that we paid them and putting it in her pockets. And then she was running interference. She was running interference with these people that were trying to get hold of me. So we had no idea. And
man,
when we found out, we had to call all these people, right, and say, "I'm so sorry."
Right. This is what's going on.
Yesterday, I didn't know I owed you a dime, and now I'm finding out that I owe you 50 grand, I owe you 100 grand. I didn't know, so
Crazy.
Our company is pretty viable, and it makes money. So, with the bleeding going and my wife at the helm,
He'll get straightened back out.
we've been able to very quickly repair a lot of damage. And now we're dealing with the courts. So we just got yesterday. We just got a document yesterday. There's something called a receivership, which is it's a law firm whose job is to. So we petitioned the courts to freeze her assets and lock her down so she couldn't sell or spend anything. Keep all this a secret from everybody because she didn't know we knew. Right. So
Jeez.
So anyway, we we just got some documents outlining how much cash was taken. Unbelievable.
I can't even imagine, man.
Yes.
The fact that you got a smile on your face shows what kind of a character of a man you are. But
yeah, the betrayal is
that
really
sucks, man.
Yeah,
It's brutal. Hey, Paul, wanted to
Pretty
ask
good
you a
trip.
question. When the chopper craze began to fade, you were actually one of the originals that was already working on making the bagger scene cooler. If I'm correct, weren't you the first to start putting the big wheel on the baggers?
yeah, there's some guys that will want to argue about that, but yes, I am.
I remember, man, that like it was you and Brian Clock that were really starting that bagger scene in a different manner.
Brian had a different view of it. So, but yes, I agree with you. I think you're right on in that statement. And if someone asked me that question, those are probably the two names I would drop
For sure,
Right.
for sure. So my question was this, like, what inspired you? Because obviously the chopper scene started to kind of slowly fade, and then the bagger craze started moving in a little bit. How did you know to go into that kind of tell us a little bit about what took you to this transition, and how did you put this kind of plan into action, moving forward with the bagger stuff?
So I know everybody wants to tell me I'm a genius, and that I saw it coming and I'm a visionary, and it's none of those things. I've always liked touring bikes, and as a hamster, I love to ride, cross country with my group.
Yep.
And baggers are a great way to do it. You want to be something and have some wind protection, and
Absolutely.
it's funny. Right over here to my left, there's an article on the wall here, in a magazine called American Rider, and it says Bagger Original, and it shows one of my custom baggers from the 90s, right?
Yep.
And the whole article is about how I'm going to make baggers cool, and I'm going to create all these products for baggers, and I'm going to create this whole product line. And I did in 1998, or whenever this article is from. I made a whole line of bagger products.
I remember.
Fell completely on my face. Didn't sell one of them. Had no
Jeez.
success at all. That could be one of the baggers.
What did you produce? What kind of parts were you producing that weren't selling?
Stretch dash, stretch fenders.
No
stretch-
shit. You were already there in '98, huh?
And
Damn.
I took all of it. I abandoned the whole project after failing miserably. And I took all of it, put it in boxes, and put it in a container, and put big red X's on the boxes because it was all written off, lost inventory, and it sat there. Right. Well, then jump forward.
Yeah.
To 2005.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were doing a charity event in Seattle, for the Seattle Children's Hospital, and we were there a couple days early. And one of my duties, I built a custom bike for this foundation, and they were going to have a big ball and raffle the bike off or auction the bike off. But I'd go in a few days early. I'd go visit all the local shops, and then we'd have a big ride with all their kind of high-paying dignitaries. We'd take a big ride somewhere, and then the last day was the big ball, and there was a charity ride that left Seahawks Stadium. It was 5,000 motorcycles or something. It was a whole week to raise money for the Seattle Children's Hospital.
Cool.
So I was at this shop called Eastside Harley Davidson, and they had just gotten in the first street climb, right? And a street
That was
climb,
what 2006 was the first one, right?
this one, well, I mean, it's in 2005, but it is a 2006 model.
Yeah.
They had an early, and I was standing talking to the manager, and I was looking at this bike while I'm talking to him. I'm like, man, you guys did a really nice job with this bike. This is kind of what we do when we take the old electric bikes and we strip them down.
Mhm.
This is what we're trying to get to. And I'm like, is this your customer's bike? And he's like, believe it or not, he's like, that's a brand new Harley Davidson. He goes, it's not customized. He goes, this is a new model for Harley Davidson. It's called Street Climb. And I was like, that's
Lit.
cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And so my wife and I think this was September, and my wife and I had a trip coming up to ride through Mexico. And I thought this would be a really cool bike to ride through Mexico. So I said, can I buy it? And he said, sure. And so I bought it, and I had it shipped back to us in Phoenix. And as soon as it got here, I started doing some customizing to it, right? I put a 21-inch wheel on it.
Yep.
It's some handlebars, which actually were the first monkey bars.
The monkey bars, yeah, man.
Those were the first touring monkey bars. I just made up the handmade set, and because we used to make bars like that for choppers. And I did some stuff to it, and I noticed it was really funny that people, we have a regular flow of people through our shop, right? Tourists and fans and customers and so on, right? Now anymore, we're not open to the public, but at the time we still were open to the public. So you could come and buy T-shirts and see bikes.
Right.
So that all ended with COVID. But anyway, I went home one night. Susie asked, it's crazy. I go, all these people are coming in the shop and they're all talking about the bagger. They walk by these $100,000 Pro Streets and they just want to see the bagger.
Right.
And I said, it's like Bagger Nation or something. It's crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
I'll go, maybe, maybe it's the time for the baggers, right? And she was like, that's a great name. I like Bagger Nation, right? And so a few months before any of this, we were printing money with chopper stuff, right? With our rolling chassis, our pipes, our long Pro Streets, and we would ship out 15 or 20 full rolling chassis a week. And
No shit, that many. Wow.
It was
Jeez.
unbelievable. It was
Unbelievable.
unbelievable how much, we were great.
Holy shit.
And I'll tell you, it was like a light switch. When that shit shut off, it was like someone walked in that shop and turned off the lights, and we never sold it at Pro Street, never sold it for the chopper. It was like overnight, gone. And I have my own theories on why all that happened, and we can get into that if you want. But so
I'd love to.
So we still had lots of chopper business, backed up choppers to build and stuff, right? So I didn't know it right away, and the bagger thing, the only reason I really started doing the bagger thing was because I was doing this bike for my wife and I to ride to Mexico, right? It wasn't like the next big thing is baggers. I always loved them, but it wasn't some big brainchild.
Right.
So I did that. I finished that bike and I took it to Sturgis, and people went fucking crazy over it, right? And it only had a 21-inch wheel on. So
Did you do the stretch tank or did you keep it stock?
no, I stretched it.
it. So you use. I got you.
Yep. It had that look.
Yep.
It had,
The Yaffe look. Yep.
But a friend of mine who actually ran this Seattle event that I participated in for several years, he worked for a Harley Davidson dealership, and he was super, super pumped up about this bagger that I had bought from them. And,
Right. Of course.
he like, dude, you've got to do a road look. And I was like, oh, fuck, no. It's fucking horrible. There's no way I'm doing it. And he's like, no. He goes, have you ever written one? I'm like, no, I wouldn't even sit on one. I'm like, he said, your next one, you have to do a road glide. He goes, trust me. He goes, look, just buy a road glide for me. He goes, and if you decide you don't like it, I'll buy it back. He goes, I'll take it back for you. He goes, you have zero risk. Just try once. I said, fine. So he sent me a road glide. God, I hated them. And at the same time, my friend Ron, who runs a company called Metal Support Wheels, he has a bigger company called Bordeaux Machine, and they do all kinds of aerospace stuff and crazy titanium, hydrogen hardening, and they make all the hardware that space shuttles together. It's crazy, right? Crazy space age stuff. Well, Ron has this kid in his shop, and Ron has huge CNC machines, right? He makes these 8-foot diameter, 6-inch plate steel wheels for Coca-Cola that spin and make cans. Can their Coke? They spin at like 22,000 RPMs and make 400,000 cans of Coke in an hour.
Right.
It's crazy. Right. So he makes these monstrous wheels that have to spin and, be incredibly high tolerance. Just wait. State-of-the-art machine shop. Ron calls me and he says, I got this kid in my shop and he's making these wheels, he's just goofing around with shit in the shop. And he was, thinking about making a bigger wheel, like a 23-inch wheel. Right. And I was like, a 23-inch wheel. I'm like, what would you do with that?
Right.
And he said, you should come see it, right? And I said, all right, I'm willing. So I took a trip over, and I don't mind going to see around anyway. And I took a trip over, and this kid, Doug, was in there, and he had made his 23-inch wheel, right? And it looked like a Ferris wheel,
Right.
It was the biggest thing I had ever seen, right? I was like, oh my God.
At that time, yeah, man.
Well, he was like, how would you put this, on a bike, or what kind of bike would you put this on if you were going to, he's thinking, well, and I was like, I think it'd be really cool on a bagger. Yeah. I said, I'm doing this road glide right now, and, we should put a 20 inch. Like, well, but it won't fit. And so it had tons and tons of rake and trail experience from chopper geometry.
Yep.
And I'm always about ride and handling, and it's a big pet peeve of mine, right? Where a lot of people build bikes and they don't give a shit, but they ride like it's
Garbage.
Well, I want to be able to ride it across country, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, I took the 23-inch wheel, I brought it home. We made a set of rake trees. We made a little fixture to rake the neck of the frame, and we ended up coming up with a geometry that kept the trail stock. So a stock bagger has 6.5 inches of positive trail.
Yep.
Well, when this bike was set up, it had 6.5 inches of positive trail. And Ron got a company to make a tire for the rim, because no tire existed. It was just a wheel.
Who was doing those first big 23s?
V-rubber.
Oh, V-rubber. That's right. Yep.
Ron had done business with them before with some project he did for some scooter cart things he was making.
Right.
And they little tires for him. So he called up Leo, the guy who runs the prototype stuff at V-rubber in Thailand or whatever, and they got some specs together, and they made him a handmade tire, a handmade 23-inch tire. And so we put it on the bike and stretched the rest of the bike or whatever. And Daytona was coming up, and I didn't have time to paint the bike. So we primered it. It was all in great primer. So I called my friend Gary, who was a real good striper, and I said, come over and do a bunch of striping on this primer. It'll look like an old hot rod. And
Right.
he had the instrument over. He did like a tiki on the dash, and he did like this coupe devil on the back. And we ended up taking rhinestones and burying them in his teeth like they were so he near just goofing around.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to be the paint job. It was just what we had time to do before we left for Daytona. Anyway, I showed up in Daytona with that thing, and dude, it was on, man.
Crazy.
Just going crazy
I remember seeing that road glide on the cover of a magazine, man, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah,
that's a big ass tire. That's a big ass rim for the front. Because usually, the grocery getters, man, that's all you ever knew the baggers as. So it's just like
it handled so good and rode great. And this French magazine, Freeway, caught me in Daytona and spent the whole week following me around taking pictures of it. It's like they forgot anything else was there.
Right.
And so, but before that, let me jump back for a sec. Before that, because we were talking about Bagger Nation. We were getting ready. We had been on the Easy Riders tour for a year. It was a big marketing thing we did for decades. We had been on the Easy Riders tour. And so we have this bagger we did, and I have all of this bagger product that's in this container that I wrote off 10 years before.
Yeah.
Right. And Ed is beating me up on this road glide. So a couple of people had seen my bike and had called me and asked if I'd make them handlebars, like I had all the street glide, right? So next thing you know, really quickly, we've got like a little corner of the shop set up, and we're manufacturing monkey bars that we're stretching heads and we're stamping dashes. And I pulled all that stuff out, and we made a quick little catalog, like a little 3-page fold-out catalog. We made a logo for Bagger Nation, and we decided to go out on tour with the Easy Riders tour in January as Bagger Nation.
That was 2011, right? You were in Daytona.
This is 2006.
Oh, 2006. No shit. Damn.
It's 2006.
That was early. Wow.
The road glide was a 2008. Actually, it was a 2009 model that I got in 2008. No. Yeah, no. It wasn't. That road glide was a 2007 because I bought another road glide that in 2008 that was 2009, and I put the first 26-inch wheel on that. And
Oh,
I'll get
shit.
I'll get
Yeah.
to all that.
Yeah. That's
So
crazy.
we went out on the road and we set up a tent with Bagger Nation, and we had monkey bars hanging in the booth. We had the 21-inch Street Glide with us on tour and a few parts hanging out from all this crap that we had written off that we couldn't sell, right?
Yeah.
And people were coming in the booth and they're looking around and, like Bagger Nation. They're like, oh, this bike's cool. This is cool. And, like, do we know you? You look really familiar, and I kind of thought they were kidding, or whatever. And,
Yeah.
well, we had done some TV stuff by name,
of course.
but what we didn't do is it just said Bagger Nation. It didn't say Paul Yaffe's Bagger Nation, right?
Ah.
And it took us to the second show. We were in the booth again. I think we were in North Carolina for the second show, and people are coming in the booth, same thing. Where do we know you from? You look really familiar, And I'm looking at Ed, and Ed looked at me and he goes, dude, your name's not on. He goes, they're not expecting you to be here with a bagger. They're expecting you to be here with choppers and shit. And so they're not putting it together. And so we ran home, threw all the catalogs away, ripped up the tent, new logo, Paul Yaffe's Bagger Nation. Next week, we were out on another show date with new catalogs and a new tent. And that was it, man.
That was it.
Paul Yaffe's Bagger Nation. It was fucking crazy.
Took off.
Yeah, man.
So Doug was all excited that we had used this wheel. And then he said to me and Ron, we could do a 26-inch wheel. And we were like, shut up. Blah, blah. And he's like, no, really? He drew it up on a computer and he had this really cool style wheel. And Ron called Leo and Leo said, I'll make a tire. And so we got this. So I made Leo gave me the diameter of what the tire was going to be. And I took a piece of plywood and cut a circle and bolted a set of motorcycle hubs to the piece of plywood and put it on the fork so I could start working on geometry and stuff. So the whole time we were building the bike, it had a piece of plywood on the front of it for a wheel that we had drawn spokes on with a Sharpie to make it look like a wheel. That bike we called that bike Chupa Mireda, which means in Spanish means wheel.
Hey, what was that? That was the first 26 ever, right?
It was the first 26-inch ever. So, and I know a couple of guys, John Schulp being one of them, who likes to argue with me about who had the first 26-inch wheel on a bike. And I'm like, dude, I remember pulling that bike in the Arizona Bike Week and laying it down right in front of you and watching the top of your head come off.
Right.
Well, don't tell me.
John Shope came in later, man.
Don't tell me you were doing this shit.
No way.
Because I remember that. Yeah, because I remember walking away from that bike and you were all over it as I was walking away, and I was thinking, how do you like me now?
Right.
I remember
funny.
that.
That's funny.
Yeah, but then we did the 26 and the big wheel. The big wheels just look so good on the baggers, right? They just look so proportionate, and they handle great. And we were riding them all over the country, and brake kits and stretch body kits and wheel kits, and it was crazy.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking with us through this episode. We'll be back with part 2 next week. See you then.